Paul's School Book a Day, December 10th, 2020. Tonight we will celebrate the first night of Hanukkah, and this story recounts the history behind the holiday as a soldier talks to his general, George Washington. This historical fiction picture book is written by Stephen Krensky and illustrated by Greg Harlan. Hanukkah at Valley Forge is published by Dutton. The general stood tall on the stony ridge at Valley Forge, surveying his troops below. The December night was clear, but the wind cut cruelly through his heavy coat. The general shook his head, shrugging the cold aside. It was his men he was worried about. For more than 2 years, his army had been at war. The general had not expected the fight to be easy. War was never easy. But some of his soldiers lacked weapons to defend themselves, and others were without coats or shoes. Nobody had enough to eat. An army of skeletons, one witness had called them. The snow crunched dryly under the general's boots. He walked through the camp. In one crude hut, a young soldier was sitting at a small table. The general watched from the doorway in silence. The soldier was lighting a candle. The flame flickered for a moment and then grew steady. All the while, the soldier was speaking softly too softly for the general to catch his words. The general cleared his throat, and the startled soldier jumped up. "General Washington," he cried. His commander-in-chief nodded. "A cold night, is it not?" he said. The soldier swallowed nervously. "Truly it is, but no colder than my home back in Poland." He paused. "And there not only is the weather cold, the laws are cold as well. If my family were to light a candle tonight, they would have to do it in secret. But that will not stop them, for this is the first night of Hanukkah." "Over 2,000 years ago," said the soldier, "my people, the people of Israel, were ruled by Antiochus, a Greek king from far away. He did not permit them to pray for their God and follow their customs. He wanted them to worship his gods, the Greek god." General Washington nodded. "The fight for liberty is an ancient one, and no one likes squirming under the thumb of a distant king." The soldier looked at his candles. "In my homeland, I could not follow my beliefs either, and that is why I came to America. But the people of Israel were not so fortunate. In a village near Jerusalem, the soldiers ordered them to bow to the Greek idols and eat from a slaughtered pig. Both of these things were forbidden. In protest, Matthias, the high priest, refused to obey, and when the ceremony continued without him, he angrily drew his sword. In the fight that followed, lives were lost, though Matthias escaped. He and his 5 sons, the Maccabees, became the leaders of a rebellion. Some said they were foolish, risking their lives in a doomed cause. But the Maccabees fought on. Their force was small, but they did not give up. The general sighed. He too was mired in an uphill fight. Independence from England had been declared 18 months earlier, in July of 1776. But declaring it had not ended the war. True, his forces had won some battles, but the British still controlled the major cities and much of the countryside. "I understand," he said. "We too have a cruel enemy who leaves us only with the choice of brave resistance or abject submission." "There was one battle," the soldier went on, "where the army of the Maccabees was greatly outnumbered. But Matthias' son Judah rallied their troops. He reminded them that battles are not won or lost solely on strength in the field. Our enemies are not invincible, Judah told them, for they trust in arms and acts of daring, but we trust in Almighty God. Judah and his army won that fight, but many more followed, and after 3 years, the Maccabees finally drove their enemies away. The Israelites rejoiced in their new freedom, and they set about cleaning their temple. They were eager to worship again in the ways of their forefathers. But when it came time to light the temple menorah, they could find only enough oil to last for one day. That was troubling. Once lit, the menorah was never supposed to go out. Still, they did not want to wait any longer. So they lighted the menorah, trusting that God would help them find more oil as quickly as possible. The search for oil was not easy. One day passed quickly and none was found. Yet the menorah remained lit. Another day went by and still there was no oil, but the flames remained strong. 3 days, 4 days, the hunt continued, but all the fighting and destruction made finding things very difficult. In all, 8 days passed before any new oil arrived. And in all that time, the lights of the menorah never went out. The soldier blew on his hands to warm them. Truly a miracle happened there. So every year we remember this festival of lights. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, and therefore I lit only the first candle of the Hanukkah menorah, the Hankiab. I will use this special candle, the shamus, to light one candle each night until there are eight. 8 candles to honor the 8 days that the oil lasted. The general made ready to leave. Your tale is a brave one. Your candles have brightened my evening. Perhaps we are not as lost as our enemies would have us believe. I rejoice in the Maccabees' success, though it is long past. He smiled grimly. And it pleases me to think that miracles may still be possible. The soldier nodded. The world would be a poor place without them. So it would, said General Washington, with a lighter mood than he had felt in many a day. And as he continued on his rounds, the wind quieted, and the Hanukkah candles burned long into the night. Hanukkah at Valley Forge.